I think we can turn on the participants and myself, our videos. And good morning to some and good afternoon to many of the attendees and to our participants. We have joined today here to talk about the disinformation campaign that is going on and the necessity for the rise of the fact-checking movements, especially across the Western Balkans or the whole of the Balkans region. We have here with us today 3 representatives from the Southeastern European network of the fact-checkers called the SEE Check. And we will talk today about how this malinformation and disinformation is not only the responsibility of one state alone or one nation alone, but that it is a regional or basically a global issue, and what we can do and what is necessary to do to ensure that we have all the tools and that we have all the means to basically fight the malinformation. Today I was thinking how to open this, and I'll be very brief because we have only 1 hour and I want our participants to talk more and me much less. But during the COVID years, there was this guy that I was following, and his name is William Bird, and he's director of the media monitoring in Africa. And in Africa, there was an explosion of malinformation as everywhere else, but in Africa it was really bad. And he said the misinformation that exists on the web can cause as much harm to a democracy as a terrorist attack, especially when the country in question does not have strong institutions to respond adequately to these dangers. I was thinking, Milica, of starting with you to tell us whether it is only the strong institutions that we are missing here, or is there something else that we are missing as well, like political will or political courage or something to fight this disinformation? And would you please just give us briefly, the history of the SEE Check, why you guys began doing what you're doing and why it is important, and where is this going to take us in the future? And with this, I will actually pass the floor to Milica, and then we will go to Darko Brkan and then to Ana Brakus. Let me just briefly say, Milica is from Montenegro. She's the program director of the Center for Democratic Transition. She's been around as an activist and as a professional in the civil society sector for over 2 decades. And with the CDT, she is dealing with radicalization, disinformation, and malign foreign influence programming. Milica, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gordon, and big thank you to GMF for having us here, for giving us the opportunity to give a little bit of perspective from this region, knowing that small regions and small languages are often being a little bit neglected in these discussions. And to start with interesting reference that you mentioned coming from this region, I would believe it's not just capacity of the institutions, it's political will or lack of it before everything, because disinformation is an important tool of politics, globally, regionally, locally, but also important tool, is becoming more important tool that generates income. So we are fighting big political and business interests that are actually helping disinformation to spread and to grow and to be more effective and influence more opinions. We started SEE Check. It's probably the most interesting kind of regional integration that I witnessed in, as you said, over 20 years of working in civil society, because it was completely genuine. So we didn't gather because some donor came and said there is funding for fact-checking. We all started from our initially different perspectives, our surroundings in our countries. first Croatia and then Bosnia. And during that process, we got together and worked together on the methodologies. And then at some point we decided, let's create networks. So projects came only after our initial idea that we need to do this. Why? Because I believe, as I see from the participants list, all the people are followers of the Western Balkans and knows the situation, but just to remind that we share many similarities. Most important one being the fact that we speak the language that linguistically has only minor differences. And as we often repeat and remind ourselves, information and disinformation doesn't recognize national borders. So we share, we have intertwined media ecosystems. We share to a great extent both information and disinformation markets. We have and witness spillover effects all the time. And we have also cultural similarities that that creates that our publics resonate the same way or very similar way to targeted disinformation and propaganda campaigns. Also, the first time when we learned how working together was important was during the COVID, where basically we were all swamped with tremendous amounts of malign disinformation, and it was done by coordinated actors with very fast translation and production of disinformation. And only thanks to the fact that we cooperated really closely, we were able to some extent to provide response. And at the time, that was practically the only response that was offered in our region. Second thing, very important, and I believe that both Anna and Darko would mention, that happened last year after the Russian aggression to Ukraine. In this region, there is already very well established infrastructure for dissemination of disinformation generated by Kremlin. And it includes Russian-owned media, but also it includes local tabloids, mainly in Serbia. And Serbia is being like a regional hub for translation and localization of the foreign media interference, and then served or fed to entire our market. And I'm specifically giving example of Montenegro being so small. It's just being one little niche of bigger market. No one would invest just to deal with Montenegro. So we realized that we need even stronger cooperation and communication, and fighting disinformation narratives and campaigns regarding Ukraine was a big part of our regional work. This region is bigger than Serbo-Croatian, and we are now working also on connecting with surroundings that share similar influences and similar cultural contexts and political, and we are also looking very much towards being integrated into the great efforts that are now being made on the level of the European Union. For us that are Europe, Southern Eastern Europe, but not European Union, it's extremely important that while we are not members, and no one can say whether we'll ever be, but that the harmonization and accession process also includes preparations or using some benefits of the new regulatory and policy solutions that the EU is working on. And I'm going to stop here. I think that this is enough for the start.
Thank you very much, Milica. You have given us a great segue into what I was going to ask Darko Brkan. So for all of us who are listening to us and watching us, Darko Brkan is from Sarajevo. He's a veteran from the Bosnian civil society, where from the organization, he's founded the organization called Why Not? And they promote civic activism, government accountability, and the use of digital media in using it to how to deepen democracy, basically. So Darko, without any further ado, there are a couple of things that Milica said and I wrote down. She talked about the spillover effect and she mentioned Ukraine, right? So it is obvious that, you know, this is going through multiple borders and multiple regions. So how do you see it from Bosnia? How do you see it? You know, very often we find this kind of malinformation in the news, which is being, let's say, published here in Serbia, but is actually meant for the audiences in another country, right? Let's say in Bosnia or in Montenegro or elsewhere. So how do we see that? And it has changed significantly with the war in Ukraine, and it has become even more malicious than it was before. So how do you see it from Bosnia?
First of all, thanks for inviting me. Thanks to GMF. Thank you, Gordana, for this. I think it's like a timely time and place for this conversation to happen, and definitely, like I think we are on as you already mentioned, on this, like, you know, a crossing point on thinking how to deal with issues related to disinformation and generally how to fight disinformation, not only in this region but like in the EU and Europe, as probably Anna will tell more about later, and then, like, you know, globally. And this is probably the only time when I'm not going to say the usual Bosnian sentence. Bosnia is a special case. You cannot compare it to anything else. Like, I think that actually when it comes to disinformation, and that is why we do regionally cooperate and work much more than on other issues, is that, like, you know, I cannot even start thinking about the issue of fighting disinformation in Bosnia and Herzegovina without considering the whole region, and like, you know, given that, like, you know, also the EU and then generally the world, like, you know, we have been taught there are obviously local issues related to disinformation. There are, like, you know, things that are solely happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but generally pretty much like 80% of our work is very much connected to the region and connected to other countries. And basically we are all, as experiences over the past couple of years have shown, we are all basically working on at least on our language territory, if not further than that. And basically, I think that has to be said about fighting disinformation. It is like one global, universal struggle that we all are part of. And, like, you know, when I usually start talking about, and it's not only fact checking, like, you know, when I usually start talking about fact checking, I use this kind of I kind of, like, you know, paraphrase Winston Churchill in saying that, like, you know, fact checking is probably the worst kind of fighting disinformation, except for all the others that are out there. So, you know, and my general feeling about this is that, like, you know, nobody is achieving enough, like, you know, whether it be media literacy work, this, like, you know, other types of disinformation work, research, these new models using technology, whatever, AI, all the way to, like, you know, these new models of pre-bunking and cognitive theories around disinformation. They all have to come together in order to fight it in a way that it is happening now. And I don't actually, Ukraine is the first geopolitical use of the similar models of disinformation. Actually, we saw the patterns in the pandemic. I think, at least for us, the pandemic was a game changer in terms of how the disinformation was produced, how quickly it spread, how mainstream it got, and how dangerous and effective it became over a very short period of time. And I think that we've all, and luckily we started the network just before, I mean, luckily and unluckily, but like at least we started the network before the pandemic, and then the pandemic was the first big test for us, where we said, okay, like, we have to work together. We have to, like, you know, use joint resources that we have to spread the messages jointly. And, like, we were able to see the effects of that. Like, I think we did like this research where we figured out that over the course of the only first few months of the pandemic, our readership or our reach of the regional fact checkers in average has risen some 800%. So basically, like, you know, and it has remained on those levels ever since. So, like, you know, it kind of shows that there is a big impact of regional and international cooperation on this information. And together with that, like, there's a IFC, an international fact-checking network. Now recently there's EFCSN, the European network, and I think only like that we can actually get all the stakeholders on board and like, you know, make both legislative and practical tools to fight disinformation and to make this happen. And I think, like, you know, another challenge that's at least for the region coming up is how to get on board with this whole legislative scrutiny work that the EU is doing especially over the tech platforms and like, you know, in general in the information sphere, and how to understand that actually EU cannot defend itself only inside its own borders, that is, especially in the Balkans, like, you know, having the fact that, like, you know, a big portion of the Balkans speaks one of the European languages, or at least is understood in Croatia to be, like, you know, totally direct. You know, the only way to fight this information, for instance, in Croatia, is to have the same rules and the same like legislative measures applied throughout the region, because otherwise it's not going to work. So I think that's the next challenge, is how to make this region, you know, like kind of follow EU in the scrutiny towards the platforms and generally in the legislation in the next period, and also how to get everybody together in the society of fighting disinformation and make new strategies and make new ways of how to actually fight disinformation in the next years. Because look, what we are seeing, this is going to get even tougher and harder. You know, the AI is improving, videos, photos, everything is going to get like really crazy in the next years, and unless we really kind of focus all of our efforts together on this, it's going to be even worse. So, like, you know, I'm also, you know, like optimistic, because the level of, you know, connection, the level of work on this has never been on this level as it is now. The dynamics of fighting this information are increasing constantly. So I think, like, you know, that if we are quick enough, we can definitely do something about it. So that's it for the start from me. I mean, I know I haven't mentioned Ukraine, but, like, you know, definitely that was another challenge on the way. And the one thing I want to mention about this is that we managed to do what it took us like 3 or 4 months when the pandemic hit. We managed to do in 3 days when the situation in Ukraine happened. That's how regional cooperation is very important, and that's how we actually managed to kind of get on board with the disinformation regarding Ukraine from day one, and we've kept it going strong. And there's actually a report that we just published like a month ago on narratives concerning Ukraine in the region here that can pretty much show you what we did. And I can, if you want, I can share the link to it in the chat or somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Darko. And yes, please do share the link. You have mentioned basically Ukraine, and again, we're talking about the spillover effect, but I'm really glad that today here we have a member of the NGO community, but from a European member state. Anna Brakus from Faktograf, one of the founders of Faktograf, and a journalist from Croatia, is today here with us to talk about how European Union sees this, and Balkans as the soft underbelly of Europe definitely has to be part of the common European fight against the malinformation. I would like, Anna, to ask you, you have been with Faktograf since 2018. Before that, you were a journalist. You were also cooperating with the GONG organization, and Faktograf was basically part of GONG organization before it became an organization on its own, dealing explicitly with the malinformation and debunking. So I wanted to ask you how you see that from the European Union. There is something that Darko mentioned, and that is this artificial intelligence, which I am really interested to hear from you, if you can maybe enlighten us a little bit, because over only the past 3 or 4 days here in Serbia, we had so many of these pictures, basically, that artificial intelligence produced and that many people thought were true. You know, there was Trump being arrested, there was Trump being, you know, running away from the police. Then there was Putin in prison. And then we even had some of our own produce here. I can't remember what it was exactly, but it is basically, there is an industrialization, so to say, of this production of the fake news. And that is very dangerous because it's becoming very cheap for those who want to produce that fake news. So how does that affect us? And what is European Union planning to do about that? And I am giving the floor over to you.
Thanks. So I mean, these two are a very tough act to follow, but I'll give it my best. So I'm, to be honest, I'm not sure if I am the best representative of the like the whole EU and the EU's plans. First of all, that's because this is, of course, just my opinion. I think that Croatia is a specific case with certain other countries where, for example, levels of media freedom or certain other aspects of our, you know, socio-political realities are not really up to the standards that we have maybe come to expect from EU countries. One of the reasons why, as Milica said, we decided as fact-checking organizations to try to work together in the region was because we all understood that that people who profit from creating or spreading or amplifying disinformation use the country borders. They don't really care about them in any other sense except for the way that they can use them, either to profiteer from them in a political or an economical sense. So that was something that really stood out to us. And as she said, this wasn't motivated by any sort of, you know, like project thinking. It was really like truthfully a need for us. And in a similar sense, that has happened on a European level in a much more broader sense. Of course, some of it has been fairly or very supported by EU institutions. And I'm talking about the creation of the European fact-checking standards network, which has happened in the last couple of months. And the logic behind it was very similar to the one that we have already explained for our region, but just, as I said, on a bigger scale. So the idea behind setting up the European fact-checking standards network was that we need to understand that disinformation spreads very, very quickly all over the place. It comes outside of the EU borders, but it also comes from EU borders. And the fact-checking community has been, as I'm sure you have, I mean, all of you have probably become aware, is a very cooperative community, probably one of the biggest cooperating community that I personally have been a part of, and it is, to be honest, refreshing. There is really a great need between organizations that are big agencies such as DPA or AFP and small non-profit media organizations such as we are, to work together and try to figure out a way that we can try to tackle this together. So the European Fact-Checking Standards Network was set up fairly recently, a couple of months ago. The first financial support from it came through a project of the EU Commission, which was given to a couple of bigger organizations, which then talked to over 40 fact-checking organizations all over Europe. And I don't mean EU, I mean all over Europe, that come from, I think, around 30 different countries. And the idea of setting up such a network was basically, first of all, to create a platform and a space for us, like the community itself, to talk, to exchange experiences, to share knowledge, to try to figure out what we can do together, but also to try to be a unified voice of fact checkers all over Europe that we can use to talk to not only EU institutions, but also to, for example, journalistic associations or institutions, to try to find partners wherever we can. And to, of course, try to communicate in a more structured way with very big online platforms, which has been a really, an issue for the longest time now. So what I can say to your question about the possible effects of AI is that, yes, it has become probably way more cheaper than before to create disinformation. It has become way more easier than ever before to share it and to spread it. And it has sadly become much harder than ever before to spot the difference. Even for people that are experts in their field, we now need to use different techniques, different tools, and I would say a very, very disproportionate amount of time to figure out what exactly is happening. So I think that, first of all, a lesson there for all of us, which is just my position on this, is that we should try to find more empathy for people who fall for it. The goal here isn't to make feel anybody, stupid or anything like that. It's something that can happen to absolutely everybody. But the goal here is to try to understand why bad actors do that, who profits from that, and what is the end goal. And again, within the fact-checking community, I think on various levels, from regional to European to global or international, with the international fact-checking network, we try to figure out a way how to do that together. However, there are very, very big differences in terms of what you can do and how you're dealt with, depending on where you come from. It for me personally, it has a lot to do with the fact that our markets are small. Even though we maybe don't think of them as markets, some of the big players sadly see us that way. And it doesn't make sense for them as for-profit companies sometimes to invest what may seem to a regular citizen, as a huge amount of money to tackle misinformation that happens out there. And that is a place where, in my opinion, institutions step in, especially EU institutions. It has sort of, I think, become there is an expectation, I would say, from EU institutions to try to figure out a way how to have constructive conversations and cooperations with very big, platforms, especially in order to kind of create like a pathway that others can use as well. So again, one of the big differences I think is the fact that many of the companies that we are talking about are US based and very focused on the US market, especially focused on people that speak English in the US, and then of course again all over the world. For us, for example, in AI, that leads to a lot of problems. That means even if you figure out a way that you can kind of try to suppress some bad behavior in English, for us it means it's going to take, I don't know, years until we come to that level where we can expect the same level of accountability from those companies to the users, which I like to call citizens, that come from countries that we live in. And I guess that is something that makes our situation a bit more difficult than than some others. Of course, our countries, this region is again, as we've said here, special for many reasons. Some of them I really love. Some of them are, not so great. But it is a place where I think institutions and fact checkers and many other actors in this place can learn from. It's not only a place that you need to be, skeptical about or scared of. It's a place filled with people that have dealt with difficult situations for a very, very long time. And there is a a type of, I would say, realistic optimism happening here that is necessary, and I think is something that we can bring to the table whenever. So we hope, I hope that the Civic representation in the broader European community is going to be good. We feel it's very important, and hopefully we get to do something good.
Thank you very much, Anna. Before I turn it over to other participants here to ask their questions through the chat, please feel free to start asking your questions now. I have, all of you, basically what you said, it's clear that we will be fighting this for, as you said, Anna, many more years, right? It is also clear that it's much cheaper to produce a fake news than to debunk it. So my question then would be, is simple. If knowledge and having the right information is part of our resilience, and it is, how do we ensure that we have the tools, the means, and all of the resources we need for this seems endless fight from here to, I don't know, probably eternity? What do you guys need so that you can keep doing what you're doing, and that we actually get the right information in due time? Because I think that time is also very important here. Many people will have their futures even ruined because of this, especially the introduction of the artificial intelligence into malinformation. So what is it that we need? I mean, as long as there are people like you, I feel safe. But there is also a growing number of those who are against the right information, who are basically a threat to us, and who are using very cheap tools to misinform us by purpose. I'm not quite sure which one of you would like to start. We did not really play this, we didn't have a scenario. Or would you like to go, Milica?
I can start because before these tools became cheap, it was expensive. So this entire, if we are taking the propaganda coming from Russian Federation, until the infrastructure was built, it took time and money. And then this technology that is now appearing, and most of it was meant for some good purposes, but is being misused. It also costs a lot of money. So the fight means that we will need a broader coalition than the one coming from NGOs. And I think that states have to take a strong role with strategies, with legislation, with measures. And I believe that for this region, it's really important that European Union stimulates the states to take part in this, like they are doing for different democratic reforms, rule of law, and so on. We keep repeating for I think 4 or 5 years already. In every meeting, we were saying to EU representatives that combating disinformation should be a part of our negotiation framework for us that are in the process. And it is giving some results now, so not yet for Serbia and Montenegro, because we are negotiating for over a decade, Montenegro and Serbia near to that, and it was different time, so it was not envisaged in the methodology that we are using for negotiations, but new methodology that is now being in place in Albania and Macedonia under this crucial chapter under the functioning of democratic institutions, where some of the political criteria are under elections. They also have what they are doing to combat disinformation. And that is a really important signal for everyone who is in dilemma. This is where you start by protecting your most basic democratic institutions and processes. Our countries are not capable to do that. We saw in the last several years that some very developed countries failed that exam, but now there are practices, there are experiences, and I think that's important to have the state involved. And I also want, before I give everyone else to comment, I think I wouldn't give up on media. I don't think that we have that luxury. I think that we have to have coalition with media in order to have effect. I think that one of the most important and successful tools, unfortunately, of disinformers in this region is to make us believe that everyone is the same, that all media lie, and that one shouldn't trust anyone, and that only brings the decline in the quality of all reporting. I believe that reporting in public interest should be supported. So not just media as private companies that are producing news, but basically journalism that is like cause-driven journalism that we need more than ever. For this, it will never, I mean, the fight will be very long even with all of this, but with having only, you know, a little community of enthusiasts that are ready to go through threats, through harassment, we will not give up, but it will take us way much longer than if we have other stakeholders involved.
Thank you, Milica. Do any of Darko, would you like to add something? Yes, please go ahead.
I'll try to be really brief, like, you know, but I need to mention a couple of things here. So there's a couple of levels of things that we need, and one is definitely mentioned by Milica, and it has to do with the first one that I want to talk about, and that's basically we have to cut down the incentives for people who are producing this information. And like, you know, basically just pure basic research shows that, like, I don't know, for instance, we've done an article recently, we helped like ProPublica, Craig Silverman, write an article about like how Google is performing in terms of like, you know, their policies on fighting disinformation. And it's the evidence based, like they used our database of more than 10,000 fact-checked articles in the Balkans. And basically more than 80% of those articles are still being monetized by Google in the region. So like, you know, there's a big incentive, money incentive, or like, you know, economical incentive for producing this information. Like, you know, if we cut that, then at least a good percentage of those that are using, pretending themselves to be the media and using that for getting income would stop doing it. And then like, you know, the whole noise, the information noise that we have will be a lot smaller. Of course, it will not solve all of the issues, but like, you know, it's a start. We need to get all the other, you know, technology companies and then platforms to commit to certain ways of fighting this information. The ones that are already doing it, they need to commit more than they have already committed. So from that side, that's it. From the side of like, you know, fact checkers and other people who are stakeholders in fighting this information, we need to, like, you know, invest more resources into their work. Like, you know, for instance, I just know from our side how much we would benefit with, like, you know, more automatized processes in doing our work. Like, you know, there's so much manual work in the things that we do, and it's like, you know, so it's really time consuming and expensive for us to do a lot of the investigations that we are doing. And also, like, you know, just getting to all the sources that have dealt with that have promoted certain piece of this information takes us, for instance, days. just to get, like, for one single piece of this information, it takes hours or days to get to everybody who's been promoting that, and then getting on top of like any means that we have. So, like, you know, there's part of investing resources, disencouraging producing of this information, and the third level is encouraging producing of quality and credible information. That has been only scratched in the global fight against disinformation. There are virtually no incentives for anybody who is producing credible information to be doing so. With the current way that the platforms are working, the current way that the audiences are distributing their clicks and whatever, there are virtually no incentives for somebody to produce quality and credible disinformation. That needs to be changed, and that would be like kind of my take on what needs to be done.
Thank you, Darko, very much. Questions are starting to pile, but before I turn to questions, that are very interesting questions. So basically, let me just sum one thing up. So the state and the role of the state is extremely important in this, right? In how to fight this and for the sustainability of the fight. By the way, I'll never use Google again, but my problem is also the fact that an average citizen, especially in our region, still thinks and believes that whatever is on TV is the truth, must be the truth, because no one could place it on the TV. So this is a huge problem. My problem with the social media is also the fact that how I hear you and, you know, understanding how I use my social media, basically the user is the product. Is that correct? So Facebook uses me, but I am the product, and that's how Google and Facebook and everybody else is generating income. Is that what you're saying? Please go ahead, Anna.
Okay, so first of all, in the example that you gave about you know, this person expecting everything to be they see on TV to be true, I think it's something that we kind of laugh at a lot. But I think when you think about it, I think it's good. So that person believes that there is a standard that should be respected, that it exists, and if it's there, it has to be true. And when you really think about it, it's the way things should be. So that person, in a way, is actually expecting fact checkers and journalists to do their job, to report what's actually happening, to put things in context, to explain. So it's, I think, in a way, I get angry about this all the time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not this Zen person, you know, that you see in this little square all the time. But I'm just trying to say that the trust that has completely left the people that surround us in the institutions that have failed them needs to be acknowledged. So most of those people are not wrong to not believe the institutions that should be serving them, and they see it's not happening. So when we think about the amount of bad information that's out there, we also need to think, I think, about the lack of good information that exists. The institutions that we are talking about, in my opinion, are responsible for the lack of good information out there. They are the ones, in my opinion, to be blamed, that when you search for example, COVID vaccine, that it's so hard to find good, reliable, shareable information that you can understand, that you can check for yourself, and that you are going to believe because you believe that institution. So I would say that the levels of trust that people all around Europe have in their institutions is something that we should take really, really, really seriously. And it's something that is, I think, like nothing can happen without that. As Darko said, in many cases, as we in this region know very, very well, we have regulation, we have standards. It's just not being implemented. And it's not being implemented because there is not enough pressure to do it. And at the other hand, as he said, there is so much incentive to break the rules because there's to be quite blunt, there's a lot of money to be made on creating and spreading disinformation. There's a lot of people that are looking for answers and they can't find the good information. There's a lot of people whose, like real pain is being taken advantage of. Fake cures are, when you really think about it, it's a horrible and despicable subject. You're making money out of people who really desperately need help. But the other side of that coin is what's happening with our healthcare systems, that you are so desperate that you're going to believe some guy on the internet to provide you a cure, because the doctor that's, in your hospital doesn't have more than 5 minutes to talk to you. And it's going to take you 6 months to even get to somebody that you're going to talk to. So the thing that we're talking about it's not easy. It really is an issue of the whole system that's surrounding us. So as Milica said, the only way through it is exactly that. We need to go through it, and we need different people from different organizations, different institutions to try to figure out a way how to work together. Because I think this level of distrust in general is not something that is sustainable. It's just not. It's something that leads to very bad stuff. And I still think it's something that we can tackle if we decide that we want to do it. But the organizations that we work in are really like a very small cog in the whole thing. We need time and we need resources to do what we do. Yeah, so that would be. Yeah, I hope this wasn't too pessimistic, but yeah, it's not just it's a mosaic of things.
Thank you, Anna. No, it wasn't pessimistic. I think I'm by far more pessimistic than you, but that's also partially because I understand the subject less than you do. I would say that societal scavengers and hyenas have got a great new tool, and unless we get the state to finally produce a lot more of political will and of political courage and actually political interest in fighting this cancerous disease, I don't think we are in for a bright future. We have a really interesting question from Andre de Manter, who says, "You are local heroes." I agree with Andre, you are our local heroes. And he's asking, have any of you been harassed or threatened, e.g. through the so-called SLAPP lawsuits, SLAPP lawsuits? Puno hvala, he says. So have any of you been threatened? Have you, would you like to share with us if you can?
I think whoever starts answering this question will be we'll have things to say. You want to hit it, Anna, and then we can continue, or you want me to start?
Oh, I just wanted to say yes. I think all of us have gone through that. The smiles are just the defense mechanisms that we needed to develop in order to, survive. So for Faktograf, my organization, we have the first 2 years of the pandemic have been really stressful. The amount of threats that we got was, it happened daily. Over 40 of them in a 2-year period were serious threats of violence or death threats that we've reported to the police. And in terms of the SLAPP suits, sadly, yes, we also have experience with that as well. There is for example, one person that we have fact-checked on multiple occasions and have agreed on an editorial level that they were spreading disinformation, has sued us, I think, 4 or 5 times in the span of 1 month, asking for large sums of money. The same person also filed a criminal charge against the editor-in-chief and myself personally, which is punishable by prison time. that has happily, I'm happy to report, been dismissed by the institutions here. But that has, for us at Faktograf, kind of, we have used that to try to learn more about the whole process of harassment that happens all over the world. But we were mostly interested in Europe in this case. We wanted to understand better why people do it, and we also wanted to understand how politicians use harassment against fact checkers for basically political gains. It was our hypothesis that certain spins of disinformation basically can, let's say, set up a playbook that is used almost universally. So we did a research survey just a couple of months ago. That's going to be out, I think, the preliminary results in 5 days on the International Fact-Checking Day. Sadly, the survey has showed that many fact checkers all over Europe have been harassed on a constant basis, and this region, as per usual in such happy subjects, is very high up the ladder of harassment that we have endured, and the level of lawsuits, and just the overall climate surrounding journalism and fact checking. So yeah, sadly we have had those experiences. Yes.
Before I give the floor to Darko to also react to that question, I just want to make sure, Anna, we agreed you must leave at 6 o'clock sharp. So once we reach that point, feel free. And with regards to all other participants, maybe we can go over for a minute or two, but not much longer. So we'll have, I hope, time for one more question. And Darko, please quickly react to the threats and harassment, but also
why don't we take all the questions and just have a round answer to them? I would gladly answer all 3 of them.
Okay, and we can also we have people who are asking about the war in Ukraine and what happened in Balkans that might be unique to the Balkan region, but is related to the war in Ukraine, the gender-based, violence that is happening online, and also in terms, there is an interesting question. It says, in terms of reporting, who does an individual or an organization turn to if they have been affected? I would also like to know the answer to that, because I have no idea. So I would turn to you, but is there anything else as well? So let's, Darko, then Milica.
Yes. So I mean, Anna has said a lot about the first question. So the answer is obviously yes. We are actually in a week's time. We will have a court hearing on 1.4 million km, which is 700,000 euros. A lawsuit that has been filed against us for writing an article about online scam scheme that's basically selling dietary supplements as medicine and earning a lot of money through it. And they apparently lost 1.4 million km, and they are suing us for that because of our writing. Just to mention an example. On the second one, well, regarding Ukrainian narratives, there are 2 that I can think of. There's a whole bunch of these localization narratives that we've learned where actually things have been kind of compared between the invasion of Ukraine and situation here in the region, I don't know, the comparison of siege of Kiev to Sarajevo, then comparison of Serbia Kosovo situation with the Donbass and Ukraine situation. There has been these narratives where usually there were comparisons between the situation in Ukraine and the region. But there's also one very interesting one which we wrote about is there has been a lot of these narratives that have been localized in a way where they have been producing fake news to present them as fake news. So they've been using scenes from, I don't know, movies, Balkan movies, and then saying these are, I don't know, these people are heroes of Ukraine in the war, and then using that to portray that as fake information pro-Ukrainian, where actually it was produced by the pro-Russian local actors here on the ground. And on the gender based disinformation, we have a lot. I mean, actually, we've done a whole research on how marginalized groups and disempowered groups are treated with disinformation. Actually, the biggest number of disinformative articles is gender biased. Actually, of all the ones that we've covered, and we've covered ethnic minorities, we've covered sexual minorities, we've covered women, children. I think the largest quantity in volume in terms of numbers of disinformative articles have been gender based. And I can, unfortunately, that research is on local language. I can share the link to it. I mean, if somebody wants to Google translate that I'll be happy to share it. And on the third one, I mean, look, in most cases, it's just us fact checkers or anybody dealing with disinformation, because in most cases it is not any type of a criminal or similar offense. But like, there are examples where disinformation goes into other jurisdictions and can be reported elsewhere. But usually people come and report it to us over the website or Facebook or any other way. But that's it for me, and I'll share the link now also.
Yes, please do share the link. Everyone is asking for that in the chat here.
I'll go really brief because I see that we are being threatened, insulted, targeted all the time. We don't have a lawsuit yet. I believe only thanks to the size of the country, but we have a lawyer preparing for the slap suit that is coming one day or another. It's there because we see its tactics that is being used everywhere. As for this, I just wanted to mention something that I think is really, really dangerous for the region. We recently did a poll taking most present narratives about the war in Ukraine and seeing how this already 1 year long disinformation campaign affects opinions. And we did ask these questions that are universal in the campaign. Are Ukrainians Nazis? And over 30% of people believe yes. Then we asked the narratives that were under the first visible fake news, which are European Union threatens family values, West political West promotes pedophilia, and then we had these percentages increased. And to greatest concern, and this is also related to gender disinformation, part of that is blaming it on gender basis. And the only 2 questions where we had over half of population believing in disinformation narrative are related to LGBT. So over half of Montenegrins believe that being gay is a health issue. And this is different from the situation that we had 10 years ago. So we have made a progress with that. And then in only a couple of years of intensive campaign, great work of civil society and citizens is just, erased, and we have to start again.
Let me just say that I was warned that our link will probably die in about 2 minutes. So we have 2 minutes to wrap up. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. I think this is, to be continued. This definitely requires a series. And I think this year will be, full of need for the series to discuss this and to talk about it, but specifically to talk about how do we move forward? Because it's clear we need resources, and we're not talking only about money. We are talking about education of the people who can take an active part in debunking, in fact-checking, and in placing that right information where it needs to be placed. I am ending this with more questions now than I had when we started this, but I guess that's a good thing as well. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be that GMF and you are, and that we are all partners. I hope we will have a year full of fruitful partnership Thank you for your time. Thank you for explaining this to everyone who has joined us today. And as I said, to be continued, and yeah, fingers crossed.
Thank you.